Welcome to the Transum Podcast, a monthly roundup of the new features on the transum.org website, providing mathematical puzzles, games, learning activities, and the ever-popular mathematics lesson starter of the day. Here's your host, John Tranter.
You have just begun listening to the 46th edition of the Transum Mathematics Podcast, recorded for the month of September 2018. And as usual, let's begin with a puzzle of the month. Now, my clock does not have any numbers on its face. It just has sort of little markers for each of the hour or 5-minute intervals. Anyway, I looked at it in a mirror one morning and noted the time that it appeared to be showing. An hour and a half later, while eating breakfast in the kitchen, I noticed the clock on my phone is showing the time that I thought the reflected clock appeared to show earlier that morning. So assuming that both clocks, the clock and the phone, were both showing accurate time, what time was it when I first viewed my clock in the mirror? So I viewed it in the mirror, the reflection, and it appeared to be showing a time, and then an hour and a half later, when I was eating breakfast, the actual time was what I thought the clock was showing an hour and a half earlier. All right, well, the answer will be at the end of the podcast. And if you're listening to this while you're driving or jogging or walking or even doing the housework, you've now got something to think about. So you can fast forward if you want, otherwise have a little thinking time and the answer will be at the end. Now, the majority of Transum subscribers live in the Northern Hemisphere, so most of them are probably thinking about going back to school at the moment, if they're not already back. So I'd like to highlight at this point the page called Back to School on the Transum website has many ideas and resources created for this very important time of year. Now, you'll find the link to this and the other things I talk about in the podcast at transum.org/newsletter. Unless, of course, you're listening to this more than a month in the future, in which case there'll be a new newsletter there, so you'll have to sort of navigate down the right-hand bar to look for the September 2018 newsletter if you want to find the links to the things that I'm talking about. Anyway, so the first one was Back to School. Have a look at that page, lots of ideas there. The next thing is to tell you about some of the new items that appeared on the Transum website this last month, back in August. Now, I stayed in London for a while I was travelling, and I was delighted, really, to see that one of the pavement artists in Trafalgar Square had drawn a set of maths puzzles instead of the usual art. So I photographed the puzzles, and it gave me the idea to create an interactive version of them for the website, and they're now online. So each of these puzzles that he drew is in the form of a 3x3 square containing numbers that are linked by hidden rules. So I've named this kind of puzzle as a Trafalgar Square. Can you see what I did there? Yes, so if you'd like to see the puzzles called Trafalgar Square, or the Trafalgar Squares, because there are many of them, again, the link is in the newsletter, or you could just search for Trafalgar on the Transum website. And thanks to some help from some clever people, I didn't do this by myself, who saw the photographs, we've, between us, figured out the answers to all but one of the puzzles drawn in chalk by this young man, this artist from Slovakia he was. So the remaining puzzle is puzzle number 8, and that's in the third photograph on the page. If you can do puzzle number 8, please share, please let me know. And I'll be eternally grateful. Thank you very much. Another new addition to the website is called Vector Cops. Now, teachers of an older persuasion may recognise the idea from a programme that was popular in schools in the 1980s. This was called VectMeet, and it was originally published by the SMILE organisation. I think that stands for Secondary Mathematics Individualised Learning Experiment. Anyway, so I've created 10 levels of difficulty for this vector COPS puzzle or challenge. So I hope it proves to have a low threshold and a high ceiling.
You are listening to the Transum podcast. You can find Transum Mathematics at www.transum.org.
I've just put the finishing touches to a new advanced starter called Test Scores. It's designed to address the misconception that when adding fractions you add both the numerators and the denominators. You see, for tests we normally would give the mark in the form of a fraction. So let's say in paper 1 you got 7 out of 10 and paper 2 you got 8 out of 10. They would both appear as vulgar fractions at the top of the papers as you give them back. So if you asked a student to work out what their overall mark was, surely they have to add together those two fractions, 7 over 10 plus 8 over 10. Well, if you add 7 tenths and 8 tenths, you get 15 tenths. And they didn't get 15 out of 10 overall, did they? They got 15 out of 20. So that reinforces the misconception that you add the numerators and the denominators when you're adding fractions, which is not the case. So how would you explain that then? Well, that's why this is an advanced starter, to try and get your students, your advanced students, to come up with a good explanation about why the rule for adding fractions is different in this case. Well, I'd appreciate you letting me know how you get on with that, because that sounds as though it could be quite interesting. So the final new addition to the website, appearing last month, is called Rough Answers. It's a set of exercise on rounding values in a calculation to one significant figure to find approximate estimates of the answer. So it starts off with some basic questions in the first level, and then goes on to more complicated calculations. So there's also a link to an exercise on error bounds, which is related. And also, if you click on the description tab, you'll find a link to a Fermi problem. I think that's how you pronounce it, Fermi. And the problem is about, it seems completely out of the blue and without sufficient data. The problem is, how many piano tuners are there in Chicago? Well, the advanced thinker will actually come up with some reasonable figures and actually be able to give you an answer to this question. These sort of questions with very little data are named after a mathematician called Fermi. If you go to that advanced starter page where the Fermi problem is, there's a link for you as a subscriber to a video which explains it all and shows the sorts of assumptions that you can make to provide a little bit of data to solve the problem. Have fun with that. Anyway, I'm just going to go off topic for a moment to tell you this, because I'm currently in Bangkok, Thailand, and the vast majority of cars here have tinted windows, and they're so dark that you cannot see anything inside the car. Now, my car doesn't. They're just ordinary windows. And yesterday afternoon, when I parked my car in the car park next to the SkyTrain station, as I got out of the driver's door, I noticed in the car next to me my reflection, because these windows act like mirrors. And I noticed that my collar was half up, so I straightened it, and I also gave my hair a bit of a flick, and then I got really close to the window just to check I hadn't got any food caught between my teeth. And just as I was sort of contorting my face and opening my mouth, to my horror, the engine started and the car drove off. there was someone in the car all the time. Anyway, that story is just my convoluted way of bringing the topic back to mirrors and reminding you of the puzzle of the month about the clock viewed through a mirror. So here's the answer. Anyway, the time I looked at the clock in the mirror, it was 5:15 a.m. But it appeared to be 6:45 a.m. And that's why an hour and a half later, the clock on my phone actually showed 6:45 a.m. Anyway, that's all for this month. Happy new school year. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for downloading and listening to the Transom podcast. You can find the website at www.transom.org, where you're welcome to use all of the activities absolutely free, or jump in with both feet and become a Transom subscriber.